Most people hate small talk because it's dry and awkward. But what if I told you the secret to making it fun and engaging is actually much more simple than you think? I live in a city and it's impossible not to meet new people almost every single day. For many years, I thought I had to be interesting and say interesting things, but actually I just didn't understand people and what they or myself really wanted from a conversation. So I started doing something differently, and it changed the way I communicate with people and pretty much all of my social interactions. Most charismatic people seem like they have this magnetic energy that just engages and attracts everyone around them. But actually, they're unconsciously doing lots of small things that can be easily learnt. In this video, I'm going to show you what these are and how I use them to avoid boring small talk. Let's look at an example of a conversation and you tell me what's wrong here. Hey, my name's Bob. What do you do? I'm a teacher. I had a teacher once. Where did you teach? In a school. What do you teach? History. Sorry if any of you have fallen asleep by this point, but as you can see, this conversation has turned into a dry wasteland, impersonal and linear. But there are some very simple ways to avoid falling into this trap. But just before we look at these, I think it's worth mentioning that unnecessarily bringing the spotlight onto yourself is always a bad idea. If someone tells you they just started running to lose weight and they're really struggling to keep it up, don't come back and tell them you just ran a marathon in under 3 hours. But there is something I found that really does engage people and makes them excited to tell you more. People want to be heard and understood. They want an opportunity to talk about how they feel and for you to acknowledge and recognize this. And it's actually not hard to start applying this to any conversation. Let's look at the first response from our previous example. And let's look at a different reply. Why did you choose to become a teacher? The first thing is to open up the floor to allow someone to talk about their personality. This allows people to talk about things that have a genuine meaning and impact on their life, which ends up making the conversation much more authentic. Another way I like to do this is to ask questions that bring the conversation onto someone's beliefs and feelings on a topic. People really like to open up about these kind of things, and usually the responses are actually quite interesting. Some examples of how we could have done this. How do you feel about our education system? What do you enjoy most about teaching? And finally, you can also add a bit of humor or excitement to the conversation. This is actually one of the best ways to be engaging. But before we look at this, let's wrap up why small talk is often so boring, but why actually it's really easy to make any conversation interesting. The first conversation we looked at followed a simple path, only building on previous points that were generic and uninteresting. Instead, if we step back from just the words that someone is saying, we can ask interesting questions that allow someone to talk about their personality, allow someone to talk about their beliefs and feelings, or bring humor or excitement to the table. Now, I want to talk about something that the best communicators implement with ease, but to most people, even imagining doing this seems ridiculous and actually sometimes quite scary. Breaking conventional norms within conversations. I often notice myself being unconsciously guarded in conversations, especially with new people. This creates a kind of invisible barrier that can lead the conversation to become forced and unnatural. Don't say anything that will make you seem weird. Talk clearly and don't expose parts of me that are different or that people may not accept. Sound smart and like you know what you're talking about. Shattering this perception of communication creates a fundamental shift from focusing on being accepted to having a good time. Because the one thing I never realized was that if you really enjoy the conversation, then so does the other person. If you genuinely find something funny and engaging, so will other people. The people that seem most magnetic and draw others towards them are not the smartest and are often wrong or even seem silly. However, they resonate a naturalness that makes you feel comfortable and at ease. These individuals make you feel smarter and funnier every time you speak to them because they share their own vulnerabilities and experiences, putting you at ease to share yours without being judged. They laugh with you and say things that they genuinely find either interesting or funny. Things that they themselves could talk about for hours without being bored, but not in the way that you think, because it's not all about themselves. It's about you. It's about everyone and everything. The best communicators strike a balance between focus and chaos, between laughs and times that require a serious tone. So it's easily said, but how is it done? I realized I had to let go of caring what people thought. To really enjoy a conversation, I had to say what I thought and in a way that I would to my best friend. I had to be silly and vulnerable because actually that way I truly enjoy what I say and do, rather than worrying that it may not be what the other person wants. I found that I was holding back so many things that I wanted to say or talk about, but when I started to let it out, conversations changed. Let's look at an example. I don't like horror movies. Same, they're too scary for me. This is a pretty boring conversation, but what about something like this? Last time I went to the cinema to watch a horror movie, I was so scared I had to leave halfway through. Never again. How come you don't like horror movies? Adding humor and making yourself look a bit silly, then bring the question back and ask about someone else's experience. Because I shared something about myself, the other person's answer is likely to be much more open and interesting. It really doesn't need to be more complicated than this. Focus on asking questions that evoke responses about someone's personality and beliefs. Break conventional norms to focus on enjoying the conversation. This is all you need to ensure you avoid that horrible, dry, and awkward small talk. For the sake of keeping this simple, we will leave it here, but be sure to hop on board and subscribe for more rambles on similar topics like this.